Okay, same day, 21st of July, 2025. Again, the Red Book, first volume, Liber Primus, section 9, entitled Murder of the Hero. They say that each of these sections includes an image at the beginning included in the actual, I'm obviously reading from the English translation, right? Which does not include the images, but the same volume does, you can see just on the page there. It's like the German text with the images inlaid. And just to mention on that, that as he was saying about images a few chapters ago, um, he's expressing himself through image as well. And there are certain things that are only able to be communicated through image. And so to really appreciate this text, it would be best to read it in the original German, but to to appreciate the images which go along with the text is an essential piece of the act. It's an essential component of the act of reading this particular text. The image included at the beginning, and there's another included during this section, the murder of the hero, is included on page, give me 1 second, eight, the eighth page, and on the left-hand column. So, the murder of the hero. On the following night, however, I had a vision. This December 18, 1913. Black Book 2 has the following night was terrible. I soon awoke from a frightful dream. The draft has a mighty dream vision rose from the depths. Had a vision. I was with a youth in high mountains. It was before daybreak. The eastern sky was already light. Then Siegfried's horn resounded over the mountains with a jubilant sound. Just to read the footnote, Siegfried was a heroic prince who appears in Old German and Norse epics. In the 12th century Nibelunglied, he is described as follows: and in what magnificent style Siegfried rode! He bore a great spear, stout of shaft and broad of head. His handsome sword reached down to his spurs, and the fine horn which this lord carried was of the reddest gold. His wife, Brunhild, is tricked into revealing the only place where he can be wounded and killed. Wagner reworked these epics in The Ring of the Nibelung. In 1912, Transformation Symbols of the Libido, Jung presented a psychological interpretation of Siegfried as a symbol of the libido. Blah, blah. Siegfried is a symbol of the hero for Jung. So then Siegfried's horn resounded over the mountains with a jubilant sound. He's with a youth in high mountains. We knew that our mortal enemy was coming. We were armed and lurked beside a narrow rocky path to murder him. Then we saw him coming high across the mountains on a chariot made of the bones of the dead. He drove boldly and magnificently over the steep rocks and arrived at the narrow path where we waited in hiding. As he came around the turn ahead of us, we fired at the same time, and he fell slain. Thereupon I turned to flee, and a terrible rain swept down. But after this dream vision, I went through a torment unto death, and I felt certain that I must kill myself if I could not solve the riddle of the murder of the hero. In Black Book 2, Jung noted, I strode light-footedly up an incredibly steep path and later helped my wife, who followed me at a slower pace, to ascend. Some people mocked us, but I didn't mind, since this showed that they didn't know that I had murdered the hero. Jung recounted this dream in the 1925 seminar, stressing different details. He preceded it with the following remarks. Siegfried was not an especially sympathetic figure to me, and I don't know why my unconscious got engrossed in him. Wagner's Siegfried, especially, is exaggeratedly extroverted and at times actually ridiculous. I never liked him. Nevertheless, the dream showed him to be my hero. I could not understand the strong emotion I had with the dream. After narrating the dream, Jung concluded, I felt an enormous pity for him, as though I myself had been shot. I must then have had a hero I did not appreciate, and it was my ideal of force and efficiency I'd killed. I'd killed my intellect, helped on to the deed by a personification of the collective unconscious, the little brown man with me. In other words, I deposed my superior function. The rain that fell is a symbol of the release of tension. That is, the forces of the unconscious are loosed. When this happens, the feeling of relief is engendered. The crime is expiated because as soon as the main function is deposed, there is a chance for the other sides of the personality to be born into life. That's from Analytical Psychology, pp. 5067. In Black Book 2, and in his later remarks about this dream and memories, Jung said that he felt that he would have to kill himself if he could not solve this riddle. In any case, we go on. Yeah. Thereupon I turned to flee, and a terrible rain swept down. But after this, I went through a torment unto death, and I felt certain that I must kill myself if I could not solve the riddle of the murder of the hero. Then the spirit of the depths came to me and spoke these words. The highest truth is one and the same with the absurd. This statement saved me, and like rain after a long hot spell, it swept away everything in me which was too highly tensed. Then I had a second vision, and I fell asleep again. A second dream vision rose in me. I saw a merry garden in which forms walked, clad in white silk, all covered in colored light, some reddish, the others bluish and greenish. The draft continues. These lights pervaded my mind and senses, and once again I fell asleep like a convalescent. Later remarked that this dream expressed the idea that he was one thing and something else at the same time. The unconscious reached beyond one like a saint's halo. The shadow was like the light-colored sphere that surrounded the people. He thought this was a vision of the beyond, where men are complete. And it's the image inserted here at this point, which is image IVV, meaning 4 (5). Again, the bottom of the left-hand column on page 8, showing the murder of Siegfried. Goes on. I know I've stridden across the depths. Through guilt, I've become a newborn. The draft continues. The world in between is a world of the simplest things. It is not a world of intention and imperatives, but a perchance world with indefinite possibilities. Here, the next ways are all small. No broad, straight highways, no heaven above them, no hell beneath. He commented on the importance of guilt. The first step in individuation is tragic guilt. The accumulation of guilt demands expiation. I know I've stridden across the depths. Through guilt, I've become a newborn. Through guilt, I've become a newborn. We also live in our dreams. We do not live only by day. Sometimes we accomplish our greatest deeds in dreams. The draft has here in addition, are you smiling? The spirit of this time would want to make you believe that the depths are no world and no reality. In that night, my life was threatened since I had to kill my Lord and God, not in single combat, since who among mortals could kill a god in a duel? You can reach your god only as an assassin, a Judas, if you want to overcome him. But this is the bitterest for mortal men. Our gods want to be overcome, since they require renewal. If men kill their princes, they do so because they cannot kill their gods, and because they do not know that they should kill their gods in themselves. Italicized, again indicating a different voice, different manner of speaking. If the god grows old, he becomes shadow nonsense, and he goes down. The greatest truth becomes the greatest lie. The brightest day becomes darkest night. As day requires night and night requires day, So meaning requires absurdity, and absurdity requires meaning. Day does not exist through itself. Night does not exist through itself. The reality that exists through itself is day and night. So the reality is meaning and absurdity. Noon is a moment. Midnight is a moment. Morning comes from night. Evening turns into night. But evening comes from day, and morning turns into day. And back to reverting to normal text. So meaning is a moment and a transition from absurdity to absurdity, and absurdity only a moment, and a transition from meaning to meaning. The draft continues. My dream vision showed me that I was not alone when I committed the deed. I was helped by a youth. I was helped by a youth. That is one who is younger than me, a rejuvenated version of myself. Oh, that Siegfried, blonde and blue-eyed, the German hero, had to fall by my hand, the most loyal and courageous. He had everything in himself that I treasured as the greater and more beautiful. He was my power, my boldness, my pride. I would have gone under in the same battle, and so only assassination was left to me. If I wanted to go on living, it could only be through trickery and cunning. Judge not. Think of the blonde savage of the German forests, who had to betray the hammer-brandishing thunder to the pale Near Eastern god, who was nailed to the wood like a chicken marten. The courageous were overcome by a certain contempt for themselves, but their life force bade them to go on living, and they betrayed their beautiful wild gods, their holy trees, and their awe of the German forests. The draft continues. Siegfried had to die, just like Wotan. And I will read this. In 1918, Jung wrote on the effects of the introduction of Christianity into Germany. Christianity split the Germanic barbarian into his upper and lower halves and enabled him, by repressing the dark side, to domesticate the brighter half and fit it for culture. But the lower, darker half still awaits redemption in a second domestication. Until then, it will remain associated with vestiges of prehistory, with the collective unconscious, which must indicate a peculiar and increasing activation of the collective unconscious. I'm thinking as well, just in passing, on the Rwandan genocide, which is it just so happens that Western Christian missionaries enter into a place, a German pagan, I don't know if it was a country at that point, and then this split results, and it's like, Christian missionaries go to Rwanda, and guess what happens? I hadn't realized that pattern. And where were we? Yeah, so in that paragraph, the killing of Siegfried. Judge not, think of the blonde savage of the German forests who had to betray the hammer-brandishing thunder to the pale Near Eastern god who was nailed to the wood like a chicken marten. The courageous were overcome by a certain contempt for themselves, but their life force bade them to go on living, and they betrayed their beautiful wild gods, their holy trees, and their awe of the German forests. What does Siegfried mean for the Germans? What does it tell us that the Germans suffer Siegfried's death? That is why I almost preferred to kill myself in order to spare him, but I wanted to go on living with a new God, a hero beyond Christ. A voice within him had said, if you do not understand the dream, you must shoot yourself. Yep. After death on the cross, Christ went into the underworld and became hell. So he took on the form of the Antichrist, the dragon. The image of the Antichrist, which has come down to us from the ancients, announces the new God, whose coming the ancients had foreseen. Gods are unavoidable. The more you flee from the God, the more surely you fall into his hand. The rain is the great stream of tears that will come over the peoples, the tearful flood of released tension after the constriction of death had encumbered the peoples with horrific force. It is the mourning of the dead in me, which precedes burial and rebirth. It is the mourning of the dead in me, which precedes burial and rebirth. The rain is the fructifying of the earth. It begets the new wheat, the young, germinating God. To be clear, that was mourning as in M-O-U-R-N, to mourn. And that was, I believe, section 9 in Liber Primus, entitled The Murder of the Hero.